So if you don't know where we are at the Mississippi Museum of Art, or we just say the Art Museum. It's one of my favorite places to come to here in the city. It's kind of in the middle of downtown, and it's kind of covered. You don't necessarily always see it when you drive by, and so it's nice, as you can see. Have here the open green space. The museum is actually behind Chris right now, and there is a wonderful exhibit called the New Symphony of Time, and that is actually also was called the Mississippi Story, and so a lot of Mississippi artists, but art having to do with Mississippi. And the great part is that exhibition, that permanent exhibition, is always free, and so that's really cool. And then there will be, you know, different traveling exhibitions coming in at different times. Right now they have Dusty Bonge, who is actually a Mississippi native and learned to paint and do this stuff a lot later in her life. And so the other day I just took a quick tour through there, and I need to go back and take more time because it was fascinating. Some others that we've had this year, Nick Cave out of New York, and the previous one before Dusty Bonge was the Impressionists, Monet, Van Gogh, Degas in their times, and it was fabulous, and a lot of people come to see that, and people are like, was it a real Van Gogh? Yeah, we had a real Van Gogh. Quite a few actually. And it was beautiful. So they do a wonderful job here, and you can come and hang out in the park and garden anytime. They have recently changed their hours due to COVID, so it's, I believe, Wednesday through Saturday, so they're not actually open today, but doing a lot of yard work today.
Sarah, thank you so much for confirming that we are on Facebook. Sarah's saying hello from Kent in the United Kingdom right now.
Well, hello.
And Jason came back and said, hey, it's sort of a political question. Favorite restaurants? Bravo, Walker's, Lou's, and Elvy's.
Oh, man, you just put a culinary destination on that. That would be awesome to be able to go have a bite of each of those places. If you're in Jackson, to eat at everything that he just listed. It is top.
Cheek, who's a regular fan of ours, says hello from Canada to both you and me.
Hello.
And Nikki, Oldroyd, I'm sorry, Nikki, if I'm saying that wrong, is saying hello from sunny Edinburgh, Scotland.
One of my favorite places. I've only been twice, but it holds a special place in my heart.
Especially when it's sunny.
Yeah, especially when it's sunny.
There's something about those granite stones that just sparkle and light up in the sunshine in Edinburgh.
It is beautiful, and you don't get that weather all the time, so enjoy it when you can.
Wonderful, wonderful. Visit Jackson's also said hello.
Hey, Visit Jackson. Thank y'all so much for getting us hooked up today.
It's worth mentioning that if it hadn't been for Visit Jackson, we probably wouldn't be here together right now.
A lot of tours in the city and work very well with Visit Jackson. I talk with them a lot about many things, and when people are coming in town wanting tours, you know, they'll give my contact out. So it's been a wonderful relationship. Working with your city is a wonderful relationship, and I don't know if every guide is able to have that, but I'm very grateful and lucky that I can work with my city, promoting our city.
Michael Callanan says hi. It's Mike in Florida saying hi. And Nikki said I got her name right. Thank you. We appreciate that. We got a nice big purple heart from Visit Jackson.
Yay! Purple's our color.
Yeah, I'm just gonna show them one last time my face, and then we're ready to get going if you wish.
Okay.
Guys, just to show you, I've got my Visit Jackson City with Soul right here face mask on. So Dr. Fauci, if you're watching, comment. You know that I'm here with my mask on, okay?
He's your top fan.
I mean, he's just too embarrassed to admit it.
Okay, one last thing at our art museum. If you're coming here to visit, don't forget the gift shop is amazing. And if I need gifts for people, sometimes I just come here just to do that, and you know, I don't have to go into the museum. They're wonderfully priced, and just some really cool stuff in there. So, just those little things that sometimes people forget not to pop into.
Yeah, you know, museum gift shops are a great.
Be careful.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off this way.
Okay, so we're gonna head this way. Now, when we're able to have you know, these festivals or gatherings. Movie night, they'll have food trucks, people get married out here, people, you know, have big events out here in the art garden. So it's a really fabulous place. We're actually going to walk through this door out here in a moment.
Sounds great. You see the trees and the trees are budding and starting to flower.
Yes, spring has arrived here in Mississippi. I'm not sure if you're in Colorado, but I'm sure this looks completely different than what you have right now. I love taking people through here. What we're going to see behind me is called Thalia Hall. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more when we get to the front. But I like coming this way to show these murals here behind the museum. They are a bit new, but it's in conjunction with a school here, St. Andrews, and a local business, A+ Signs and Creative, and they get together and the art students do these.
So great. How nice for those students also to have a place to be able to exhibit their work and
I know,
get exposure.
And be able to come back in, you know, in the city or visit and be like, hey, we did that, we helped with that. So it's really cool.
So is this hot yet, or is this not hot at all compared to what it's gonna be?
It's a little hot right now because it's just up in a little bit, but it's gonna get a lot harder and hotter coming up. In fact, I mean, I tell people, if you know, I want you to visit Jackson, you know, any time of year and enjoy it. But if you know, July and August, you're going to be really hot, and it's bike shorts, tank tops. Women don't care about putting on your makeup. It's just going to sweat off. It's the time of year where my hair perpetually stays up in a ponytail or a bun. So it can get really hot here, but we love it, and we would prefer it versus really cold and snow or ice, because that happened to us about 2 weeks ago, and not just here in Jackson, but most of Mississippi. And I mean, this is the one affected. People were, I mean, I got stuck at my parents' house for a full week. You couldn't go anywhere. The roads were ice. I mean, and that's just something that doesn't happen here. So obviously it was just a huge shutdown from that. So, and everybody was like, I'm so glad we don't have months of this versus that. So I do want to talk about this mural here. It's a newer one from 2019. And so you can see it up in the corner here. It was done by Birdcap. Birdcap is a Mississippi artist. He doesn't live here, but does a lot of stuff in Mississippi. And he did this for Big K.R.I.T. So Big K.R.I.T's fourth album came out 2018, 2019, and did 4 different murals around the U.S. I believe one was in Denver, Houston, Jackson. I do forget where the other one was, but it was for the release of his 4th album. And Big K.R.I.T is also from Mississippi. Had gotten a Mississippi artist to do these around the U.S. So if you're from Denver or Houston, and I'm forgetting the other one, but if you're from there, let us know if you've seen the Big K.R.I.T mural in your town. Obviously, this is his style. It's kind of mythology and cartoons and what's the word I'm looking for, but kind of, you know, comics mixed into one. And you can recognize Birdcap's style very easily. If you're in Jackson, and probably the other ones have this too, but there is a scan thing you can scan with your phone, and one of K.R.I.T's songs will come on.
Oh, that's so cool. I wonder if you guys at home can scan this right now on the screen.
I didn't know if you could screen from a screen. Maybe. I guess you can.
Cool. Sarah, from our friend from Kent, has written says hi from Texas.
Hey, Texas, hope you're doing all right. Our street art did start slowly. I'd say 2012 there was an initiative to do a lot of the light boxes in town, and different artists from around the state, did those. So I feel that was kind of one of the first times we're seeing this public art down here. The past few years in Jackson, there are, and not to say anything bad about the past there, but there's a lot more younger people here. There's a lot more initiative to have this public art. People are in places that realize the importance of that in Jackson, and so the past couple years it really has just boomed with our art and our murals and the local artists that can make that happen. And so it's really been amazing, the outlook out of it for sure. So this is Thalia Hall that I was talking about earlier, and there'll be again one day back there'll be big events here. So if there's traveling shows or concerts, that will be here, and local concerts as well when it's going to be quite a few hundred people. But Thalia was named after a ballerina, a professional ballerina. She came to Jackson in 1975 to start a professional ballet company here, and did an amazing job. It's the Ballet of Mississippi. And in 1979, made it to where the International Ballet Competition stops here in Jackson, and Jackson is one of the cities for the International Ballet Competition. And I was not big into dance. What does that really mean? There are 4 places in the world that hold the International Ballet Competition, and that is Helsinki, Moscow, Varna, and Jackson. And it is amazing. So we'll have people from all over the world come here, either to participate or watch the participants, or people who are just really into dance and that art that'll be coming here and staying in Jackson for, I believe it's about 3 weeks. Now, we were supposed to have it this year, but due to COVID, all the other cities, they weren't going to pass them over. They're still going to go in order. So I hope to see you here in 2023 for the International Ballet Competition here in Jackson.
Yeah. Daniel Musha says hi from New York.
Hello.
Kristen lets us know that yes, you can scan that music.
Oh, hey, all right. Did she like the song?
Kristen, how's the song? Did you? She's probably listening to us.
Okay.
Hopefully. And Teague says that building is absolutely beautiful. What is the blue mural to the left you just passed on the building? Oh yeah, Teague, you might have missed it just a second ago, but that was, in playback, if you watch it later on, that was Big K.R.I.T's.
That was a mural for Big K.R.I.T's 4th album coming out, and it's by an artist called Birdcap. Big K.R.I.T and Birdcap both being from Mississippi.
Yeah, exactly. But great question, Teague.
We're going to walk up a little bit, but I would like to show you this statue quickly here. We don't have to get that up close to it unless you want, but so that is that statue of King Louis XIV on his horse, and it's the same one that the same one that is in Versailles. So back in the mid-90s, I know I was in high school, so that's why I know that time period. The art museum with Versailles, the Palace of Versailles, came here to Jackson and did this whole recreation, and it was called the Splendors of Versailles. Room that was the Hall of Mirrors. I mean, it was amazing. So cool. So many people came to that. It was really cool. But that was something, as I believe, as a gift, that was the only thing left over from that. And I believe it is either the only or maybe just a handful, 3 or 4 official replicas of that from Versailles. Like, you can't just go and make a replica and say that was the one from Versailles. So that was left over from the Splendors of Versailles exhibit. It's really neat. So it's been there ever since it left in the 90s.
Such a neat thing. It's like how the Eiffel Tower will stay the reminder of the World's Fair.
And people didn't like it at first.
Did not, did they?
Same with the Pompidou Center. All these things that the French don't like at first end up being the big reasons why we go. Street here and turn down that street, just so we can get a great view of our Capitol building, and we'll be walking up to that. So We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I mentioned that Jackson has really seen a lot of change and a lot of stuff coming kind of around 2008, 2009, and before that it was, for a really long time, for decades, it just was the seat of government. So you had government offices and law offices, and it was a business district. So meaning after kind of 5 o'clock, there wasn't, really anything going on downtown. Hello. And so that's something that we see change now slowly. We stayed downtown, great place to stay. We have some really great hotels here. But they're like, I didn't see, on a Saturday, there's not as many people walking around a downtown area that you might think. So again, that's changing little by little. So that's something I'm really excited about. I remember coming down here in high school and just kind of walking around the downtown area, and there wasn't, if it was after 5 o'clock, there wasn't really much going on. So I'm very happy to see that that's been changing.
Yeah, when I did a short walk around yesterday when I first arrived, I also was, we noticed that there weren't a ton of there weren't a ton of foot traffic, a ton of pedestrians around.
We can do it.
Officer, I think.
Oh yeah, hey.
It's an undercover car.
So that is something than some others.
These are dogwoods, right?
I think so. I don't. I'm not a big tree or plant person. I'm not an arborist. So there is a tree down here that people always ask me about. I'm like, I've got to figure out what tree.
Fragrant.
The white building over here to our right, I'm not great at my right and left. That is our city hall. There was once a nice little stream that flowed through. That's not been flowing for a while now. That's actually, this is the front actually, but the back end is, the back side of it is actually where most people enter, and that's kind of what we call the front. So it's just, you don't see as many people using this area here. It was built prior to the Civil War. It was not burned down during the Civil War. A lot of Jackson was. In fact, it was burned down 3 different times by Union troops, earning the name Chimneyville. But the City Hall was used as a hospital, and then also on the top floor was a Masonic lodge. And so those were the 2 reasons that it did not get burned down.
There's Andrew Jackson.
Our city is, well, I'm going to tell you this in a little bit, but our city is named after Andrew Jackson. When they were trying to find a location where that location was going to be, it was already going to be called Jackson. He was a big, well, he's a controversial subject, but at that time he was a war hero here in the Battle of New Orleans and all that, fighting the British. Hence the reason it's named after Andrew Jackson.
The building looks a lot like, the U.S. Treasury building, but without the wings on it.
Yeah, I would. I mean that period of the Greek Revival, very, very popular then, and we'll see that in a couple other buildings. That was kind of a time period where Greek Revival, it was the American architect scheme was trying to go away from their British counterparts. They wanted to be separate from that in that kind of sense in architecture. So what better way to go away from that is to go back to the seat of democracy in Greece. So that was kind of it makes sense once you hear it.
He mentions that the area looks incredibly well maintained, very glamorous, and that the building looks like a mini White House.
It does.
Thanks, T. Thanks for that.
We'll see. Street. Everybody be careful doing this, but it's a really great view of our Mississippi Capitol building, and we're going to be walking in that direction. Now, we call that our Capitol building, but it's actually our new Capitol building. and we'll see a shot of our old Capitol building when we get up here. But you don't have to say old Capitol and new Capitol. You can say old Capitol and Capitol. So, this is one way, so we should be good. Yeah, I mean, the downtown area does stay clean. There's an organization that promotes downtown is Downtown Jackson Partners, and we might even see some of their ambassadors that will be roaming around on segways, just keeping the area safe. And here is beautiful, this red brick one. And that's called the Electric Building. It does have some offices, there's apartments up top, there's a splendid rooftop. But I don't know if you can see it from here, but the awnings at the very bottom are purple, and that is the new Visit Jackson office that gave you your goodies. And they have a wonderful gift shop as well. So people, don't forget, if you're definitely wanting to get something for, you know, friends or family that, you know, talks about, shows Jackson, that's a great place to get some presents and gifts.
I found the people from Visit Jackson to be incredibly hospitable, and it's exactly what you want in a destination marketing, you know, organization.
They do. They do care. I love the lifeblood they've got going through there, and they just won an award. And they're gonna, Paul, put the link up for the award that y'all just got, but they've been praised for their handling of social media and getting the, you know, influencers in, and just their new, you know, marketing campaign of Jackson. So
it's quite literally why we're able to be here together. Although it's also worth mentioning, which we didn't before, is that guys, you know, especially our lovely patrons and fans who've been supporting and following, just remember that these live streams are funded through you know, your passion, your enjoyment, but also your contributions. And you'll see a donate link in the notes, and I'm going to post a donate link shortly as well. It's always great if you can be supportive, and 100% goes to the guide. So that's always nice.
Well, that is nice. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So
with kind of this in the background, I was just going to give a quick little, unless that's going to be too loud, of how Jackson became the capital.
Yeah.
And if it was better to do in the shade or not, but I know this guy's here, so you tell me.
Oh gosh, it's great. As long as you're,
okay,
you know, everyone else is drinking sweet tea at home, so they don't mind if we're in the sun or the shade.
Got it.
That we can hear on the mic anyway.
Okay. Well, it might be cool to have our old Capitol in the background.
Yeah.
While I'm talking about this. Okay, so, and actually when I do my walking tours, we're usually up there when I'm talking about how Jackson became the capital.
Can we swap over?
Sure.
Just because I've got a little bit of obstruction.
Sure. You're the one holding the camera. You tell me where we need to go.
This is what I'm talking about. This is teamwork right here. Okay.
Okay. So I'm just trying to make it a little short, not as long. So Mississippi became a state in 1817, and the Choctaw Indians were forced to cede their land. Let's just, you know, be clear on that. We're forced to cede their land in the Treaty of Dokestan in 1820, and that opened up not all the borders that we see in Mississippi today, but that opened up a big central portion of the state to settlers coming in, or new people coming in to start a life for themselves, to start farming. And they wanted a capital that was going to be a bit more central to everyone here. And that wasn't just Mississippi. Quite a few states, you know, have moved their capital cities, and a lot of that had to do with, you know, the access to the masses. And so they, you know, the legislature was like, okay, well, we got some perimeters, it needs to be high ground, fertile soil, healthy air, it needs to be next to a navigable river, you know, so knowing those parameters in mind, 30 miles from where they kind of thought like the center of the state was at that time. And so they looked for a few places, found this one, and said, okay, well, this meets all the parameters for that. There was nothing here. There wasn't a hotel, there wasn't a tavern, there wasn't like, oh, you know where, you know, the Joneses live. That's a good little spot. There was a trading post that had already been abandoned, so I guess they got the memo on the parameters too, because that's why they were here. But that was it. So this was just wilderness. There wasn't anything here. So they made it to the Capitol. 1821 was signed into law. 1822 was our first legislative session here in Jackson. So honestly, you can say the first inhabitants of this city were politicians. And so that's why we're here. Should we move the Capitol, or we want the Capitol, self-serving interest, we want the Capitol somewhere else? And finally it was like, we need to, you know, lock it down here where our Capitol's gonna be, because we need a Capitol building. So they made a law that said at least until 1850 Jackson will be the capital. So therefore they could start on a building, you know, worthy of a legislature. And the building behind me is the old Capitol. And so that was our first Capitol building. Now there was a little makeshift building for a couple years while, not makeshift, but a two-story brick building while this was being built. And the guy who built our old Capitol is a guy from England named William Nichols, who immigrated over to the US in the late 1700s. I'm trying like 1820, no, it was before that. And he ended up with some jobs building and around and designing buildings, a state house in North Carolina, then went on to help with Chapel Hill, then went to Alabama for their state house, and then helped with the University of Alabama. Now those state houses in North Carolina and Alabama that I was talking down, or they moved capitals and something happened to those buildings, but we have to remember they were built like early 1800s, so they might all not survived anyway. But he finally came here to take over the building for the old Capitol, and they asked him, and he was like in his 50s when he came here, they asked him not only to do the old Capitol, but the governor's mansion, which we'll pan around to in just a second, which is behind us, and the state penitentiary. And the state penitentiary is now where our Capitol building is. So the state penitentiary is not in the middle of downtown Jackson anymore, but that was the state penitentiary. Then you have the old Capitol, and then you have the governor's mansion. No, it's okay. I mean, we'll get to all of them, but they were all done by William Nichols in 1839, 1842, 1838. We still do have our old Capitol and our governor's mansion that was designed and built by William Nichols. When he was done here, he found himself in his 60s and kind of unemployed. He went around to do some other buildings and things in and around Mississippi, but there was a new university that was being built around that time, and they said, hey, he's had some experience in Alabama and North Carolina, and so the University of Mississippi got him, Ole Miss got him to come design and help out with, I don't know the whole campus, or the whole campus at that time, but he also built the Lyceum building, which is a symbol of Ole Miss.
Hope they don't come along and arrest my arm.
Yeah. Ooh, see, my hair's going up. You can't see it blowing in the wind. I wish the wind was blowing. Maybe it will.
Not the only one.
And I know. Oh, here it comes a little bit. It hurt me. We'll see it on another one, but that is our flag, y'all. And we are so excited about this flag because it's a new flag. Got a new flag as of last year, and we do not have our flag with the Confederate symbol anymore, and it is amazing, and we are just so excited about that. And I would honestly have not met one person that thinks the opposite of that. If they're out there, I don't feel bad for you because we love it. So,
Awesome.
So that's been something very exciting for Mississippi as a whole.
That's a great history. Thank you for catching us up on that. Teague asks, this is absolutely stunning. Do you have a favorite food down here?
It is. Well, I love gumbo. I'm a big fan of gumbo. You may think that is just Louisiana or something like that, but no, Mississippi has has some really great chefs that make some really great gumbo. I mean, I love fried catfish. Fried catfish is delicious. I usually have that, you know, quite a bit, especially on a po' boy or catfish bites or on a taco.
I wish I hadn't asked you the question. You're making me hungry.
There's some really wonderful places. In fact, there's a restaurant just down this way. We can't see it from here, called the Mayflower, and their redfish is to die for, along with their homemade comeback sauce, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I guess we can go down this way for a little bit. We can walk in front.
The whole world is our stage. So.
Okay. What kind of? Again, with our governor's mansion, you see that Greek revival style. Again, that was just very popular in that time. It's the second oldest continued lived-in governor's mansion in the States.
What's the oldest?
I do not know. If somebody knows what the oldest governor's mansion is, let us know. Now, I will tell you this while we're standing here, and I'll let you pan to the other side, because I will talk about this building, but this little area that goes here and around the fencing around the governor's mansion over to the park, which we'll go over to the park in a minute, is an architectural district here. Wasn't necessarily meant to be as it was being developed, because it wasn't all developed at the same time, but we had some really wonderful architects here in Mississippi. And so, I mean, for example, here that used to be a bank with the columns, and it looks like metal in between them, but that's terracotta. And then you kind of, you pan over. This is the big high rise here is the Lamar Life building. And I do not profess myself to be an architect historian. The more I do tours, the more I'm learning about architecture, but that is not a hard one to see, the Gothic or Gothic revival. For that, we have the statues, and apparently there used to be little alligators coming off, like gargoyle style, that the water would run down.
Aww.
But I don't know what happened to them. This is one of the examples. We're going to see a few others. This is one of the examples that we see some new life coming back into Jackson. As I said, it has been now for at least a good decade. But these just became apartments. This building either had been offices or kind of sit vacant. The whole building wasn't occupied, even if there were. So we're very excited now that people are moving in here. Living here, and that just started. What month are we in now? I feel like I keep forgetting my time and month after last year. It's like what? So a little bit less than a year that they've been ready. It's been less than a year. So that's really cool. And then we're going to pass two other historic places that are apartments and ready to move in as well.
Our friends at Visit Jackson, and also Nikki on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you, both of you guys, for pointing out that Virginia is the old.
Well, I figured it had to be on the East Coast.
Yeah, makes sense. Quick question: what does rent look like in Jackson? If I wanted to move to Jackson and be part of this really thriving, exciting growth and change and progressive move, especially now that the flag's fixed itself in a way. What's a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom downtown going to run me? Well,
downtown's going to be different from some of the other neighborhoods that are kind of houses or more traditional looking apartments. Mm-hmm. These are newer, so they are a little bit more expensive than what we've been used to in the past, but they're newer with new amenities and great stuff. So I'm not exactly sure about that one. I know some other ones over here that will. That I've seen are 1,000, 1,100 to some of the bigger ones, 15 for the month. I mean, that's when you go to other cities, people are like, that's the same. And even rent and stuff like that in Jackson and Mississippi is lower.
Yeah, it feels a lot lower than Manhattan, New York, for sure.
It is. That's one reason I love it. There are others, but I do love it for that. One other thing that I wanted to point about the Lamar Life Building, it was Jackson's first skyscraper in 1925, and a very famous person here in Mississippi, her dad worked there before he passed away. So Christian Welty, Eudora Welty's father, worked in this building, and when they had become president, was only president for a little bit before he passed away of cancer, but there was an architect firm out of Texas with a Mississippi overseer, I believe N.W. Overstreet, kind of oversaw it, but since they were here, asked if they would build his new house in the neighborhood of Belhaven around the same time. So both houses were built in 1925. And no, the house in Belhaven does not look like Gothic. It's a Tudor style. And that house also, the Eudora Welty House and Garden, is a wonderful place to go visit. Even if, I tell people all the time, even if you've never read, her works or really knew about her, you don't have to do that to enjoy that museum and her history, and just her popularity as a woman Southern writer. And one of my favorite little things to say about her is she died, she was quite old. She had already given over the Welty House to become a museum type of place. So who does that, 30 years or 25 years before they even pass away and live in that house, while that's going on? She never married, she never had kids, and at that time that was kind of a big deal. She was never called a spinster or an old hag. She was in Jackson. In fact, other things in Jackson are called, Miss Welty's Jitney, or Miss Welty went here. And still to this day, like, people will say that kind of stuff about her. So it's really great. And the gardens in the back you can go check out just about any time.
Very cool. Just a quick couple of thank yous. Michael Kalinin, thank you very much for your donation and your support for Jane's tour.
Thanks.
And Michaela, also thank you very much for your donation already. Really appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, guys, so much. I really do appreciate that. Awesome. Excellent. One thing I do want to talk about before we kind of go is the role that Jackson played in the civil rights movement. So in the early 60s, we see a lot more. Oh, go ahead. In the early 60s, we see a lot more. I'm sorry. We see a lot more protest happening. One is the vigor behind it. Another is media like TV, showing this. Another is just more people, more young people, getting on that and participating in the struggle and nonviolent protest. And here in Jackson and downtown Jackson specifically, because that's where we are, there are 3 markers that are nearby where we are. And we're not going to pass them, so I wanted to talk about them real quick. And one is that way we have the Tougaloo 9. That was 9 Tougaloo students that were arrested for going into an all-white library to try to get books that were not in their. That was a planned effort, to go do that, coordinated to go do that. So they were arrested a little bit later that year. At the beginning of the summer, we had the 1961 Freedom Rides, and that came and stopped here in Jackson. Now, that was supposed to go from Washington, D.C. all the way to New Orleans, but was met with so much violence in Alabama that the Mississippi government, Eastland, they were both very staunch segregationists. They made a deal with the Kennedy administration that basically said, hey, we won't have violence, like they'll be okay, but we can arrest them. And so that was the deal that was made. And so when the Freedom Riders got to Jackson, they were immediately arrested and taken to jail. And that did not stop them, because the rest of the summer you had about 400 more Freedom Riders come in from different bus stations and the airports and the train stations, and fill Jackson, with every one of them being arrested and taken to jail. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is they weren't protesting to change the law to desegregate interstate traffic for interstate facilities for travelers. That was already on the books by the Supreme Court. So they were protesting this to enforce a law that was already on the books. And just for protesting and enforcing a law was to get arrested. So that happened here in downtown Jackson, just down the street. And in 1963, just down this street here, we're on Capitol Street, we had the Woolworth sit-in. And Woolworth sit-in happened at quite a few Woolworths around the South. And in Jackson, Mississippi, I would say that it was one of the most publicized. And in 1963, it was organized by the NAACP field office here in Mississippi. And 3 Tougaloo students went to sit in at the Woolworths counter, Ann Moody, Perlina Lewis, and Memphis Norman, and something that they thought that would only be maybe for a short time. They thought, okay, you know, we're going to do this, we'll get arrested and we'll go to jail, and that'll be, you know, we're going to keep doing this kind of thing. Well, the police were not called in to arrest them, and what instead happened was almost like a mini riot. The manager did not ask the police to come in. You had students just up the block from Central High School that was an all-white school that came over on their lunch break, and you can find pictures of this, I mean, online very easy. There's a very famous picture, and the place is just packed. 3 hours, just anything they could pour on them. They were getting hit in the head. Memphis Norman was getting dragged off his seat and kicked in the stomach a couple times. Women were getting slapped. I mean, then a little bit into this 3 hours, they had their some colleagues from Tougaloo also come over kind of to see what was going on and sat with them. And also three white people, well, from Tougaloo also sat with them, a student and a teacher. And so you had 7 people, white and black, sitting there going through hell for 3 hours during this massive protest. It finally subsided, and they were escorted out. But that was a big moment in the battle for Jackson in the civil rights movement. Medgar Evers did too. They thought that might cause a little bit, you know, too much. Well, it would incite the rioters. And 2 weeks after that protest, he was shot and killed at his house by Byron D. LeBeckwith, and later died at the hospital. So that was a very intense moment for Jackson with the early 60s, 63, and Medgar Evers' funeral. Now, all that, there is a great display of the Woolworth sit-in at our Smith Robertson Museum. It was our first museum to talk about the African-American experience here in Mississippi. But all those, that story and those histories can be found and shed light upon and learned and discussed at our Civil Rights Museum here in Jackson. And that opened in 2017, so it's still, you know, brand new. And in that same building as well, and it is a fabulous, it is done so well. If you're coming to Jackson and you think you're just going to stay here for a day to go experience a little thing, you have to take a whole nother day just to experience our Civil Rights Museum. We're very proud that finally Mississippi's black story can be told and understood in a way that it should be. So definitely don't forget to check that out.
Thanks for sharing that.
It's great.
Just to acknowledge Teague, who's been such a loyal and generous supporter. He also just made a donation to support.
Oh, thanks, Teague.
So, thank you, Teague.
I really appreciate all that. That's great.
If you trust in the goodness of others, they will reward you, I find. Just lean in.
Well,
you know?
Well, keep the circle going. Sometimes when you feel like you've done stuff for people and you're like, was that enough? Did they get it? Did they know? And sometimes you just have to let that go.
Right. It all comes out in the wash.
Right. So we are coming up on Smith Park here in just a little bit. It was the last remaining green space from the original city plan here in Jackson. They wanted to, I believe, have more, but you know, the city needs tax revenue and buildings, you know, for those spaces. So this is definitely over time, but we're glad it's here. It's been under some renovation. You can't really tell about the renovation now, but they've kind of done it in some phases. And most recently, last week, they had a big, not just press release, but people were out here looking at it, and we have these bistro lights here now, and we're super excited. Again, this is a place where we'd have, you know, little festivals and block the streets, tents, whether it be food, food or items and music and the little amphitheater. So it's a really great place in the middle of town that we can use. And so hopefully maybe in the fall we'll be able to kind of start getting some of those back. We'll have a big gumbo fest. Hopefully that will be coming back.
Awesome.
Different teams and chefs making gumbo.
Yeah,
So
it
go ahead.
feels like there's just an amazing infrastructure here. The only thing that we're missing are the people. to some
Yeah.
extent. You know?
Yes. And you'll definitely see a lot more people kind of walking around, at lunchtime, because they are walking to local restaurants here. And then again, that's just, like everybody been hit a little bit different during COVID. Some restaurants have just kind of opened back up at night and maybe not done a lunch or vice versa. So as everybody is, I know we're getting super excited to see a light at the end of the tunnel for that. But one thing, I don't know if we can get up here, but one thing I wanted to explain as well is why we kind of don't have that. So we'll tell, just kind of wanted to explain that part.
Sure.
So Jackson's, I love Jackson. It is a different kind of city. And so I talked about when Medgar Evers passed away in 1963, and he'd worked so hard, and he did not get to see the past. And that was, a great thing, but also there is a quote from a business owner here on our historic Black District Street of Farish Street named Gino Lee, and he's quoted as saying, and his business has been there since the 1930s. He's third, generation, and before you leave, you might want to go get a smoke from the Big Apple Inn. But I like his quote because it does explain it. He said, the 1964 Civil Rights Act was great for the African American, but not so great for the African American businessmen. And here in Jackson, we could see that unintended consequence. And it's a little bit further down that way that we can't, get to today, but it's the historic Farish Street district. And Farish Street was a huge Black community, especially after Plessy versus but equal, the Supreme Court said no, that was okay. So you had a lot of independent Black neighborhoods come to be and develop during that time. And Farish Street was thriving. It was a very successful African-American neighborhood. In fact, some say it was the biggest one after Harlem and had the nickname, Little Harlem. And so what happened after the Civil Rights Act was African-Americans could now go outside of that insular community. They could go spend, money other places. And I'm not saying that all of a sudden that became a very easy, thing to do. Yes, that was still hard, but you could buy property. You could go start a business. You could go shop outside of that district. And it did not happen overnight. So we kind of but as businesses were moving out and not coming back in, that area kind of slowly declined. But Jackson is a little bit different as well because it was so close to downtown, and where we were earlier on Capitol Street had so many businesses, but it happened to the white community as well. In fact, a lot of white businesses shut down instead of integrating. And so, again, that takes time to do. So that was a big reason that Jackson kind of shrunk in the sense of the people being down here shopping as much. And the other 70s and 80s were going out to those strip malls or the mall. In fact, we had a McRae's department store here, and it closed in 1978 to go out to what was called the Metro Center Mall. And so we just see decades of people moving out, white and Black, and not moving in. And so it just has taken, that much time to kind of rev that back up. So that's what we're doing. We're revving it back up, and it's going. But you also cannot leave Jackson without hitting up Farish Street, especially on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, doing some dancing, getting some grub at F. Jones Corner or Johnny T's Bistro and Blues. So don't leave without doing that, but also don't go until 11:30 midnight. So be ready.
What time is last call in Jackson?
Well, so Jackson is different. Farish Street has an entertainment district designation, and so 4 a.m.
Oh, wow.
But that's not everywhere in Jackson, so don't go everywhere and say I was there till 4 a.m. last time.
Sarah, Thank you so much. Sarah from Kent sent through a donation to support.
Oh, thanks, Sarah.
So thank you very much.
That is very nice. Well, we are about to wrap it up here, if that's
we're on your
okay.
Clock.
No,
we're loving it, you know. Michaela says, beautiful churches. Sorry, Michaela, not to mention it before. She says they looked older than they are, in a good way.
Yeah, so some of them have been around, either the congregation has been around since the early, 1800s. Obviously, some of these churches have been done or redone, not redone, but updated in the sense. So you see a lot of them, actually, thank you for that question, and even on just one street over, because there's one there, there's one behind me. We just passed one, but
the park, the other side, that's
yes,
over there? Okay.
Yeah, that's part of this one.
Oh, this whole thing is a larger.
But the legislature, and I honestly can't remember when. I mean, a long time ago, had set property by Smith Park in this area aside for religious institutions or churches, and because also too, if you see through the brick that's all that catty-cornered that. Of Jackson, I think Mississippi too, but anyway. So we have Catholic, we have Methodist, we have Episcopalian one street over, and you don't have to swim over here, but behind this house here, we have a big Baptist church. So you are right. It's I know that we have a lot of churches, but because we're here and we're always seeing it and we grew up with it, we forget how many can be on every corner, and it's something very fascinating for other people to see, and especially that it's different denominations and not all just one denomination.
Yeah.
As we're kind of wrapping up though, if anybody else has any other questions, I just want to point out our Capitol building. Once the old Capitol, it just got too small. It needed renovations. We can get in the street here.
Yep.
There's nobody driving this.
And
so it was, it was time for a new Capitol building. 1903, and I love the self-guided tours you can take in there, and I'm not sure if that has opened back up yet, but the Dossets are wonderful too, that can give you a tour, so it's definitely something to check out. But I love the fact that turn of the century, 1903, the state was like, we need a new capital, but I wonder where we're going to get this money. And so Mississippi took two different railroad companies to court, to the U.S. We're not paying their taxes to the state of however that worked out. And so Mississippi won, and we were able to recoup a lot of money from the railroads, and they used that to build themselves a new Capitol building. And it looks like some others you've seen, I'm sure, so after that same vein. But it is a beautiful building. Yes, we do have a lot of historical buildings here, beautiful, different architecture, and that is a testament to some really great architects that we have had and have here in Mississippi also. Any other questions though before?
Michael says, nice, thanks for the tour. Daniel says, love the history you've shared. Guys, if you have any additional questions, now's the time to ask them for right now before we slowly wrap up. Otherwise, you can ask them, of course, and either I or Jane will go in and respond to you guys as well. Don't forget to hit one of those donation links if you feel like you still can or wish to. You can always comment, share. Also helps if you're watching on YouTube. Now's a good time to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and make sure you turn on the bell notification. Subscribe is good, bell notification is better. Oh. Bell notification lets you know when we go live again. So when we do awesome pop-ups like this, you won't have a chance to miss them. And besides that,
I I would love to give you a tour of Jackson. Let me know when you're in town. Also, if you don't have a time for a tour, I help people with their itineraries while they're coming through Jackson or the state. I don't want you to miss some really cool things, so I do that as a service also. And hey, again, we just hit that much, so Jackson's got a lot more to offer. I didn't even get to all the restaurants, although I have said that we are a culinary destination. But downtown where we are right now, you have Martin's, you have Hallamals, I talked about the Mayflower, you have 4th Avenue Lounge, you have I talked about Johnny T's Bistro and Blues and F. Jones Corner, don't forget those. And we also have the Iron Horse Grill that's got a really cool free music museum upstairs, and just about Mississippi music and Mississippi's participation in the evolution of awesome music. So that's, again, all with just being where we are here.
So you need at least 2 nights in Jackson. You can't come to Jackson, you know, don't drive by.
At least 2. I would say 3. I would say 3, because you need at least 1 day to check, to have at the museums, and then 1 day for a tour, 1 day for a culinary delight.
Yeah, and with Vicksburg being so close,
it's a wonderful day trip over.
45-minute drive over to Vicksburg. Easily stay in Jackson, and then be able to enjoy the cultural and culinary benefits of Jackson, while then also being able to visit Vicksburg and see the history there. So.
Exactly. So you can definitely, Jackson's a great hub as a little spot to stay in while you're doing that. And we also have, I tell people all the time, I'm like, Mississippi's awesome. We don't have those sprawling metropolises. We don't have, these huge cities. And so it is more open, and we have a lot of trails and outdoor, things to do as well, kayaking. So we can hook you up with all that too.
Yeah, awesome. Great. Thank you so much for taking care of us. People are just saying goodbye and saying thank you.
I know, gotta wrap it up. Bye.
All right. Well, thank you guys. And I give you the honor, if you wouldn't mind. You can see in the top right-hand corner, there's a little end button there. If you would tap that, it'll end the broadcast for us.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks so much.